crypto asset? Which one's the best crypto asset? Bitcoin's the best crypto asset. Which one's the best? 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 What's the second best?
This is Discover Crypto. My name is TJ, and every day on this channel, we show you how to make money with Bitcoin and digital assets. We've got a really good show lined up for you today. Shout out to the Disco fam. We're happy that you're all here. I'm joined by two very special guests, the one and only Kelly Kellum and the Druth from the basement joining us live here today. We're running it back from Friday. It's disco dance time, Steve-O says. That's what we were all doing yesterday at DZ's wedding. Had a great time.
I got down for the first time in a long time. I got down.
Yeah, you did. Everybody did. Kelly got mega down as always. He's always a great time at a wedding and a party, fun hanging out with everybody, just feeling the good vibes, watching DZ, seeing the softer side of DZ a little bit. And beautiful wedding, beautiful venue. Everybody had a really, really great time. Perfect weather. Good songs, good food. I mean, it was basically everything you could ask for in a wedding.
Perfect weather.
Yeah,
absolutely.
so shout out to them.
You know what? It was the first time, probably, I don't know how long, that we all got together outside of the studio where we got to just revel in life and appreciate each other. So it really, really was a beautiful ceremony. And again, shout out to, I just did a photo yesterday. This was from Nashville last year at the Bitcoin conference. This is DZ and his beautiful bride there in front of the beautiful skyline. So again, shout out to them, the family, and everybody that showed up. It really was a wonderful, wonderful weekend.
Yeah, it really was. And good to remember why we do all this stuff. And DZ, that's true wealth right there. That's winning for your bloodline for life. But huge shout out to all of you that are joining us here today. We see people on Rumble saying hello. We see the people on X saying hello. We've already got Bears and Bulls fighting in the chat. Steady Bug telling us we would never break 100K. Taki Holder saying, are we going to 91, 92? That 92K level is a level many people are talking about right now. One we've been watching for a while with some CME gaps. Their guys are going to break down a couple different targets there, as well as what to expect this week. We've got horrible mistakes by the governor of Arizona, losing for their bloodline for life. But Kelly, what are you looking at on the charts, and what are we getting into today?
Well, first things, I'd love to show this chart that you shared, and also shout out to every one of you out there that's watching here on YouTube, on X, on Rumble, wherever you're tuned in from. Make sure, if you're not yet, you're following the @DiscoverCrypto_ Twitter handle here. TJ and the team, we've all been trying to, just keep everybody updated. But he shared this: the VIX above 60 has marked the perfect S&P 500 bottom in the last 35 years. But Kelly, but Discover Crypto, but TJ, but Drew, we want to talk about Bitcoin. Well, Bitcoin is a part of the global financial landscape now, and we have to pay attention to what's happening in the stock market as well, how that correlates with what's going on with Bitcoin. And this is important because this has also marked incredible reversal points. Of course, not back here, all the way back here in 2008. I'm sure that there was some sort of price action in Bitcoin. Oh, no, wait, Bitcoin came out in January 2009. But when we're looking at these other key points, it has been incredible reversals. And in fact, I also shared this on, look at this, April 7th. This was the day that marked the bottom. And I also shouted out the VIX, when it goes parabolic, like we see on these marks right here. You can see this pink line, the white, the price candles is actually Bitcoin. This is perfectly correlated with that sort of inflection turning point of the bears getting a bit exhausted, and that, what was it? Peak fear. This is why you're never going to get rid of that hope and fear in your heart, in your body, in your bones. The difference is you learn how to work with it. And this marked, I said, this could be nothing, but this also could be marking that bull reversal, because we did not only see the VIX peak, the volatility index on the stock market essentially is what you're looking at. Volatility also marking peak fear. We also showed on the actual price action charts that this also was represented at the same time this happened. These two price points also showed a massive bullish divergence in the charts. And furthermore, when we come over here and look at this, we've got not only what's going on with the CME futures in these gaps, we'll talk about that in a moment, but when we zoom out, this is at these lower lows on the price action coming into this perfect point, retesting what the previous range high, at the same time getting the VIX spiking, but also this massive bullish divergence. when you're getting a combination of different sort of data signals as ingredients, that's when you start building a stronger conviction for a reversal to catch it before or in process of it happening. Now we're getting, yes, the breakout is real. This has come up, tested beyond these previous range lows. But does this mean it's up and away? I think when we zoom out in a couple months, we will see that it is that. But all of us are zoomed in on the 4 hour, the daily, the 15-minute. And in that case, I do think it's going to be some time for a little bit of, I don't want to say troubling, but dip buying opportunities this week.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm saying. We're going to be diving in a little bit deeper on some technical analysis where you have some stories we got to cover because there's some market shaking things going on. But I want to throw it back over to Drew. And what's on the top of your radar as we start this Monday, Cinco de Mayo,
That's right.
everybody. It's not Taco Tuesday this week.
No,
It
it's
might
Taco
be Taco
Monday.
Monday, but
That's right.
what are you seeing going into this week, Mr.
Well,
Drew?
and give us the highs and the lows. What's up today? What's pulling back today? Kind of give us the general coin market cap review kind of stuff that we usually start the show with. If you don't mind.
I mean, it really, if we're looking at coin market cap, we're smack dab in the middle of fear and greed zone here. This is a 49. Bitcoin, it's pretty magnetized to this 94 spot. There is a CME gap that's actually pretty big above us. And below, the one below us is actually a little bit smaller. The CME gap we created recently is from 96.4 to essentially 97.2. The one below us is about $500 worth of a grab at 92 to 92.5 there. Really, this is on the daily. We are getting that print of red, and it is a moment that, you know, I'm basically still open to snooping around for the next long. I'm really wanting to put my next position in once we see this lower CME gap filled. Liquidity is getting, you can tell just on the trading side, a lot of longs are getting a little bit skittish on the shorter time frame. There are a good amount of shorts to liquidate up here at about 95.6. And the overall here is, honestly, if you're looking at this on a 3-month time frame, it is pretty clear sailing. I think that, you know, where we're at in the markets, I'm being careful about the next position, but the alt season everyone's asking about, I still think we're gonna have to wait till June for that actual, you know, the Fed rate cuts to come into play and see that real risk appetite come back. Altcoins at large, though, man, I mean, been kind of sleepy. Let's see if there's any winners here.
Well, take a look at this crypto bubbles chart because it's a great visual representation of what we're seeing over the last month. We have been seeing some movement here. So I think we're still contending with this idea of, has alt season happened already? Did it happen twice with the 2 full round trips? Is it not going to happen, especially with all the liquidity focus on Bitcoin? But then you zoom out over the month, and this is crypto bubbles where we're seeing what the performance is specifically just from 30 days ago to now. And we see Layer up, Virtual up, Pingu up, Tau up. You know, I made this call at 232 and it's just made $232. It's made some massive gains. I actually did another buy since. I'll probably be stacking more into this. Core 70%, Sui up 57%. But then you get back down over the year and you realize over the year, what Bitcoin's up pretty large over the year. But when you look at altcoins over the year, there's only a handful of coins that have made massive gains, and the rest of the coins are still sitting in some pretty big losses. Then you go to the daily, and you are getting a mixed bag as well. A little bit of a pullback in the hourly, little bit of a move to the upside. But I do agree with you. I think all eyes are going to be on the dominance. All eyes are going to be on some of these things that we were talking about, which we're going to dive into in a second with what we're seeing with the Arizona reserves, also the Bitcoin reserves, also North Carolina, also what's going on with a very important report that may be coming out today. Hopefully it does, regarding the National Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. What's going to happen? What's actually being held? Drew, do you think that they're going to produce a report, one, today? Is that going to come out? And two, do you think we actually hold, the U.S. still actually holds everything that they're quote unquote supposed to?
You know, it crossed my mind that maybe they're keeping the valuation of gold per ounce at $42 because they don't want to show what's behind the curtain. And then, you know, like, well, we should have tens of trillions of dollars, but instead we got a couple hundred bill. But no, I actually don't think we're going to get that report on time. And I think that that's actually going to be a little bit of a disappointment. You know, and on the flows, man, like we just saw your yearly outlook of, you know, all the different altcoins. Really, Sonic over the last 3 months has had some really good inflows. Base is kind of second behind Sonic, but something that I really want to take time when we do get more entrenched in the altcoin stories is it kind of struck me this weekend. Not a lot of people really understand, altcoin to Bitcoin pairing charts. And I think that understanding those Sol to BTC, ETH to BTC charts are going to be super important for people to know when to get out of specific altcoin positions back into Bitcoin. I think that kind of idea, I just don't want to have it a year from now or a year and a half from now when altcoins do have that major, kind of reconsolidation. And there's a lot of people out there that didn't take profits, because taking profits for me is very, very important to better my life actively through what I'm investing in.
And Druth, I have to shout you out because you have made some incredible calls, both about 2 years ago, throughout this year. March last year, you took some pretty big profits while I was still degening in with Ultimate Hopium, just breaking my knees on the way down.
Yeah,
you've affected that. Rather than just taking screenshots and feeling good and then crying weeks later, you actually took some profits and you matriculated that money off the screen into your real life.
Absolutely.
Building things on your property and doing things to affect your life.
Well, it's like you can't live inside of a bag of altcoins, right?
Yeah.
And so my general idea is every time I saw the momentum move majorly to the downside, like we've seen on these weekly charts for Bitcoin, like the weekly candles have printed this green dot. I'm still operating in a buying mode. I bought big here at that 75 dip. I also longed out of here very effectively. Bought this, momentum wave to the downside right here at about 57. And then the time before that, we've only had this essentially 3 times, this bull market. Previous bull market, I mean, if you're not counting the COVID dip, we essentially had 3 of them as well. I mean, we kind of had a double movement to the downside here when we had that secondary pullback during COVID. But essentially, this bull market structure was made up of 3 main momentum waves to the downside, the green dot print, and then the moving on up. So, how long this momentum to the upside lasts is the last question in my mind. I am of the opinion that we're going to see some pretty good things, especially over the course of the rest of the year. We have like 4 estimated rate cuts from the Federal Reserve as things sit right now. About 2 days from the next FOMC meeting, having that CME gap below us and above us leads me. I'm acting a little bit patient this week in terms of trading.
Yeah,
let's make sure.
We're going to look at some of those levels a little bit later into the show. I definitely think we do have a Fed meeting on Wednesday. That's going to impact some things, but let's talk about a little bit about what's going on with the title. We've got some people asking what happened with the strategic reserve. If you guys don't know, I don't know if this happened Friday or Saturday. I don't remember exactly when the news broke, but sometime after our last show over the weekend, meet Governor Katie Hobbs. This is the face of lack of freedom for the state of Arizona. If you guys don't know who she is the governor of Arizona. Had the opportunity to make history and become let Arizona be the first state opening up treasury, having a Bitcoin strategic reserve, and unfortunately chose not to do that. And I kind of agree here with Jameson Law. This will age very poorly. This was basically her signing off saying that today I vetoed Senate Bill 1025. The Arizona State retirement system is one of the strongest in the nation because it makes sound and informed investments. Arizona retirement funds are not the place for the state to try untested investments like virtual currency and Bitcoin. So choosing to pass on a Bitcoin strategic reserve, choosing not to make history. Now, obviously, there's many other states that are pursuing this. Obviously, the federal government themselves are pursuing this. This is a big initiative of Donald Trump. There could be some politics in play here, but what do you guys think when you hear somebody say, we're not going to invest in Bitcoin because it's untested?
I mean, 31 members voted in favor of this, of the Arizona House, and 25 opposed it. and she still
That was
moves
just the
to
House, and
veto
then
it.
the Senate also approved it and passed it
Right.
through. So they passed the House and the Senate, and then she came in and vetoed it.
Yeah.
Tell us you want to ignore the people larger. I mean, I actually even shared a post on that, a little bit more cutting, and it's essentially shows right here. Tell us, the words are there, because when you're seeing the data, when you see the mass money printing, when you see the inevitability of every government fiat system, and that is printing, that is, if everybody's worried about inflation, they're worried about the cost of eggs, they're worried about groceries and gas and your house appreciating. No, everybody you have to realize that your house is not appreciating in value, and very small form may be doing so. The large amount of that money appreciation that you're seeing is actually the devaluing of what your dollar's worth. It's not that your house is more, it's not better. It's the same house. How can you have a house from 1951 that all of a sudden is more valuable now? It's not. It's because the dollars are depreciating. So when you see things like Bitcoin, and you see the trend that this is on with sovereigns, with corporations, with, I mean, it's getting to the point now where you're choosing to either outright be ignorant, literally choosing to, because all the signs, the signals, the data is there. And you're also ignoring key points rather than saying, oh, I'm scared because I don't know it. Well, get your ass into an online forum. Educate yourself. I mean, there's no reason now for you to be so resistant to stuff when you have the biggest asset managers on earth doing everything in their power to stack as much as possible. Not only MicroStrategy, they just bought more today. They got another $180 million worth. I think they're up to 555,000 Bitcoin. Now you got 21 shares? It's not 21
Capital.
21 Capital
21.
now is going to be in a race also to be buying. There's other reports I saw today that they're expecting something around $300 billion worth of Bitcoin to be purchased. Or of course, that's going to be a variable number of Bitcoin, but about $300 billion of currency is going to be going in to buy Bitcoin over the next few years just for corporate treasuries.
Well, she's got a hard stop on, she's going to veto everything that comes across her desk. She put out this statement. It's, basically she's going to veto any legislation not tied to bipartisan agreement on disability funding. So it looks like it's stemming from that, kind
Basically
of
saying,
stance.
if you guys want to pass this thing that you all are trying to pass, you got to pass my thing first.
Exactly. It's essentially political blackmail,
Yeah.
Shameful. A few extreme Republican legislators are holding funding for Arizonans with disabilities hostage to their political theater, yet she holds their monetary system hostage until that specific part of legislation is put into place. Business as usual cannot continue until Arizonans with developmental disabilities and their caregivers have certainty they need.
Well,
So
if this is political theater, she's a star of the show.
Well, let me ask you guys this. We got this here. It's Steve-O saying it's all good. North Carolina governor. So if you guys don't know, this is North Carolina's next up to bat. They're the next one that have this come into the governor's desk, passed by the House, passed by the Senate. He says North Carolina governor will sign BTC strategic reserve and will show Katie how it's done. And then immediately, somebody else saying they don't trust the governor of North Carolina either. What do you guys think? You have any thoughts or bets on if this passes in North Carolina? If it doesn't, I think we've got Texas.
Texas is next up.
And I know for sure Texas would pass it and love to. I don't know for sure. I imagine Texas would pass it and would love to be, the historic state that really does this first. But what do you think? North Carolina, yes or no? What do you think?
I'm going to say no. I think no. I think North Carolina has been, I don't want to be too hyperbolic on here, but I think it's going to be politically motivated to be against anything Trump does right now.
Ken's saying he's a plant. He's not even from North Carolina. Ken has some strong. Ken, are you from North Carolina? You must be in that state. You got some strong opinions.
The bull in me wants to say, yeah, North Carolina's got this. I think more so I'm looking at Texas or Florida. I think that those are the more likely, even Dennis Porter was saying that he had seen Katie Hobbs be slightly open to crypto in the past. But as we can see, it's essentially boiled down to political blackmail, where if they're not getting what they want on all the other accounts, Katie Hobbs holds a position of power. She's just vetoing it. And this does raise some concerns for me in the long term. We're talking about executive orders being put in place by Trump currently in this political realm. Was to say that Democrats take power with Gavin Newsom in 3 years from now and undo it.
Nothing.
Right?
Nothing.
That's absolutely potential.
Executive orders are only good for as long as the president's in there for the most part. Like
so that's what I'm thinking of. I'm like seeing this, and it's not like the political polarization is slowing down. In my opinion, it actually seems to be heating up to the point where even, liberals are against electric vehicles now for some reason in the form of Tesla. So the psyop is real. The people's aggravation and their political bias is getting stronger. This is what comes to my mind when I think 3 years, 4 years down the road, should Gavin Newsom take control? Because Bitcoin, and actually it makes me kind of happy to keep, I don't want this all to just be this up only super cycle right now. That bothers me, the idea of it, because I'm still trying to get as much Bitcoin as I can. I'm still trying to spread the message as far and as wide as I can before Bitcoin truly consumes the existing monetary system. I think that all roads lead to Bitcoin, including the Federal Reserve's overprinting and everything like that. The longer we can have edging on a political side for Bitcoin strategic reserves, the longer that we have entry points that are under $100,000.
That's true.
So,
well, it's hype too, right? I mean, once it's buy the rumor, sell the news. As
Mhm.
long as it's a rumor, it's good. It can keep the price going up. As soon as it actually happens and people realize that like it's a little slow. And there was actually some other big news we'll touch on. And this is, I feel like there's a lot of big news happening right now that isn't buy the rumor, sell the news. Stuff like, the SAB 121, some of the financial changes, some of the Stablecoin Act, getting that Genius Act passed. Hasn't happened yet, but I believe it's going to. And then recently over the weekend, we had Apple making some changes with the way they handle crypto payments and, within the App Store, which is huge, removing that 30% fee. So a lot of that stuff is really, really big. We did have this ad here from Coinbase that we were going to show that has to do, it's just funny when people say it's untested. This is a good ad to check out. It's very basic, but I just wanted to share it because I'm a big fan of the stuff that Coinbase has been doing in this kind of general education of the new Bitcoiner and just kind of comparing Bitcoin and kind of putting some context in of. It's funny when she says untested, because what do we know that is tested? And we'll play a clip from Warren Buffett talking about this as well. That was some other big news, but is governments love to print money and they never stop. Bitcoin, there's only 21 million. And here's a really good demonstration of that.
If a Bitcoin was the size of a quarter, all 21 million of them would fit inside a single shipping container. But to fit the dollars the Fed prints on average every day, you'd need 72 shipping containers. Each year, you'd need 26,280 containers. And to fit what they've printed in the last decade, well, you'd need a lot more than that.
Jeez.
Yeah,
Holy cow.
Just keep it simple, right? I mean, like the perspective there is phenomenal. I wish they would do one of those ones that you've seen it with like the nations that hold gold.
Yeah.
And then, the way it stacks up and size perspective and these little cubes. Yeah. I mean, that's the easiest math out there. Your money divided by 21 million or your money divided by infinity. Those are kind of that's the basic math equation you need to do. Even a probably, I don't know when you start doing basic division, like fourth grade, something like that. Even a fourth grader can look at that math and know, hey, that ain't, I'll take my money divided by 21 million, not my money divided by infinity.
So it's grounded in physics too, right? Mathematical equations, energy consumption. Like for me on a more tangible side, it's like at least there's something that you have to spend and put out into the world to be able to get Bitcoin back. That was an easy equation for me to do when I saw the March of 2020 really, really opened my eyes. I was already about gold and bullets and beans, things of that nature. But then when I realized that everything has turned digital to a degree at that time, 5 years ago, fast forward to where we are right now, we are growing exponentially in terms of transferring this entire system into an electronic based system. So,
and I'm glad you mentioned March 2020 because you know what happened in April of 2020, right?
I mean, quite a bit.
Stimulus checks.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
And for those that say you can't get rich on Bitcoin and Bitcoin's time's already passed, stimulus check, $1,400 stimulus check, April 15th, 2020. If you made that purchase, $22,000.
Yep. And I did it. I YOLO'd in, man.
Wait, I thought Bitcoin died. It died like 4 times since then, right?
Yeah. I thought people were telling you were too late for Bitcoin. You have to put it in other things. I know a lot of people that when that stimulus check hit and they started to question, wait, where does money come from? How did they just put this money in my bank account? How?
Mhm.
Why?
Well,
Where did it? Like,
on that note, I shared this a few weeks ago. This chart here shows, and this is crazy to really understand.
Yeah.
80% of all dollars that have ever been created or existed were created in the last 5 years.
Mhm.
Bitcoin Teddy says, have a good night. And this is, this is terrible. However, if we are tuned in, we realize that Bitcoin is the most important asset in history because it's beyond just a monetary system. It's a means of transfer. It's a means of storage. It's a means of representation of how important it is to be a part of our culture, yes, and transact, yes, but also make sure that we can also be our own financial sovereign, have our own financial sovereignty and participate in this. And it's not just for individuals. Corporations are starting to follow that trend. Institutions and governments, world governments, we are about to bear witness. We are in the middle of this event horizon of the fastest race towards a monetary system that you have access to as well. This is the first time in history that we could actually be ahead of the trend of a government getting involved with something versus being behind it and just falling victim to what their sort of miscalculations and manipulations are, which is essentially what every fiat system is marred with.
Well, it's going to be a new. I was thinking about Bretton Woods we had in the past for the setup of the current monetary system, but it's probably going to be a Mar-a-Lago, right? Like 20, 30 years from now, the meeting at Mar-a-Lago.
Yeah, well, don't tell Elizabeth Warren, but they're doing deals with Trump's stablecoin. She was getting pretty upset about that, But
on that note, there's another big, massive transition going on underway right now, and it's the Oracle of Omaha. Warren Buffett announces retirement at the end of this year. This happened, I think, on Friday, but over the weekend, essentially. He has been the CEO of Berkshire Hathaway for 55 years. And by the way, I just want to shout out something about Warren Buffett, and that is he, for a period of time, he was the richest man on the planet, but he's always way up in that upper echelon with tens and tens and tens of billions of dollars. And he did that through long-term smart investing, risk management, and he's basically been at the helm of Berkshire Hathaway. And all the time, he's basically lived in the same house for 40-something years. He drives just a regular sort of upper middle class car, doesn't have 47,000 security around him. He's just a good dude that thinks long-term. The question's going to be here, look at this. The stock is up. I can't even read that. Is it 4,384,748%, or 19.8%? This is why these percentages that compound, only 19.8% per year compounded over time. And this is what it ends up being. This is why you need to stack those wins. You don't need to always have a 4,000% gain on every trade or investment you make in 3 months. Let things compound, because this is over 55 years. This is insane. The question is going to be, though, what does this mean? Do you think this is going to usher in a change of mission, a change of focus? Because he's been, him and Charlie Munger talked about Bitcoin being rat poison. Meanwhile, in the back end, he's been investing in other banks and such that do have Bitcoin facing products and Bitcoin facing services. TJ, do you think that we're going to see a new trend with Berkshire? Do you think the new CEO might actually be investing in Bitcoin, much like this meme suggests here? Warren Buffett, my time has come.
Yeah, I saw this great. Go buy some Bitcoin. I don't know how to do it. Here's $400 billion to the new Berkshire. I did. That was a great meme. I saw that. I don't think we're going to see a dramatic shift, in my opinion, in Berkshire Hathaway's strategy. I think they've built their brand on legacy and long-term, like you mentioned, long-term bouts at long-term investing. That being said, I do think we're seeing a changing of the guard in the financial order of the world right now. And I think we're seeing new people come up to the table and new people with the seat at the table. And I do think this somewhat is representative of that. Him and Charlie Munger have been running it for a long time. I feel like after Charlie died, it probably wasn't the same for Warren to run anymore. He probably didn't have the same level of joy doing the job as he once did. Huge shout out to him. He's a legend. He's one of the greatest to ever do it. Big benefit of the fiat system, operating the way it does. His timing was great. It was a good time to get involved in, when you were on a sound money supply, let it go off a sound money supply. He was very close to the center of that circle. So Congratulations to him and all the holders over the years. I do think we will see somewhat of an updating. Like you mentioned, they're big investor in Nubank. They're big investor in parts of the world that could be big beneficiaries of this. But I don't think you're going to see a strong like about face. Like, hey, we're shaking things up. We're going to go crazy now. I think it's just going to be a slow, methodical.
I mean, there's something to be said here, though. You can win hard if you know what's coming. And also if you receive $100 billion in bank bailouts when, so Berkshire Hathaway is a major stakeholder in Bank of America.
Mhm.
In the 2008 crisis, they received like $75 billion from the government to buy out Countrywide and Merrill Lynch.
Mhm.
So someone that's had nearly a century of just up into the right action also is entitled to nearly $100 billion in bailouts to then stop. This is where the psyop of traditional finance really gets me, because if they would just let the process play out and those over leveraged loans and that, that credit margin call happen in true, the system would fall and collapse, and this is like the birth of Bitcoins out of that, 2008 crisis, designed to be the backing of it. And it made sense why Buffett was never open to the idea of Bitcoin, because it takes away the fiat scam that he receives hundreds of billions of dollars taking part in. So I know he didn't die or anything, so I'm not having to be like, did he die? He
No.
didn't die. Okay.
No.
He retired live at the shareholder. He did his
Okay.
last Berkshire Hathaway shareholders meeting.
Yeah.
But he did have some things to say, didn't he?
Yeah, he had some really good. So you want me to play that clip?
Yeah, I'd love you to
wanna
play it.
listen to what he-
And I'd love to shout out. There's a man in the chat that's another man's chicken. I appreciate you for watching my content over the years. Thank you so much for giving so much engagement.
Here we go.
Let me see what he-
We'll
let me
pull
see.
this up here and let's see what he says.
And obviously, we wouldn't want to be owning anything that we thought was in a currency that was really going to hell. And that's the big thing we worry about with the United States currency. I mean, the tendency of a government to want to debase its currency over time is, there's no system that beats that. You can pick dictators, you can pick
That's kinda what
representatives, you
makes me
can do anything. But the people, there will be a push toward weaker currencies. And of course, that is, I mentioned very briefly in the annual report that the fiscal policy is what scares me in the United States, because it's made the way it is. And all the motivations are to doing a lot of things that can cause trouble with money. But that's not limited to the United States. It's all over the world, and some places it gets out of control regularly. As they know, they
Tell him to speak up.
they devalue at rates that are breathtaking, and that's continued. I mean, and people can study economics and you can have all kinds of arrangements, but in the end, if you've got people that control the currency, you can issue paper money, and you will, or you can engage in clipping currencies like they used to do.
That's basically what you were saying, Drew. Like when you control the money supply, when you control the fiat, you can kind of do whatever you want, and they will print it on demand. That's what we've been seeing, and use it to their advantage. Use it as economic warfare. Use it in trade.
Right.
But China and U.S. both famously have been debasing their currency for a very long time, and that's more or less what he's getting into. It was interesting to me, though. Berkshire Hathaway, one of the largest shareholders in Apple, right? The same weekend that Warren Buffett steps down, you've got Apple, making changes to the way their app store works and allowing for Bitcoin payments. And
That is an interesting timing.
I just thought it was interesting. I'm not saying there's any correlation, not saying there's any connection to those two things, but it was interesting. That's a very big development. That's been one of the main hindrances behind any crypto related app or any payments related app for the most part is the app store wanted 30% of all transactions happening within apps.
Right.
So that means if you've got a wallet, if you've got a DEX, if you've got a game, if you've got any kind of betting thing where financial transactions are happening, they're trying to get 30% of every single one of those. That was a big change that happened this weekend. But we also have a lot of other big stuff happening this week. I don't know if you want to give us a rundown on kind of the top things to watch for this week so people can get prepared. We mentioned the FOMC. I know we had a story on that, Kelly.
Yeah, we got a couple things. One, everybody's watching the price action right now. Everybody gets super excited with the $300 move up, and they think the world's over if it drops $82 to the downside. Everything's looking actually beautiful. And on this article, it shows Bitcoin price action attempts to hold the yearly open as support after some downside at the weekly close. But we need to pay attention to what's going on because, and I talked about it on a short that I did this morning on BitLab Academy, is we have the FOMC meeting tomorrow. It starts
2
tomorrow.
days.
Well,
2 days.
it starts tomorrow, and then it's a 2-day thing, and then they have the decision, which is going to be in a couple days. I actually pulled that up right here. If you're wondering what that decision is, well, currently the CME FedWatch tool shows there's a 99% chance based on the way the rate probabilities are going to be based on how people are interacting with the CME futures and everything, the bets that they're making, 425 to 450. This is exactly where we're at now. So this shows most people are really of the assumption that there's going to basically nothing's going to happen. The question is going to be not really if something's going to happen on 2 days from now. What's the tone going to be? What sort of can be gleaned from the talking points in the was it not the interview, the press conference that's a little bit after that. It's about 30 minutes after that rate cut comes out. Then we also have jobless claims comes out and Coinbase earnings as well. To add a mixed bag of potential volatility triggers, especially as everybody's now debating still whether or not we've been in a recession. Right. And I would argue, TJ, I think you might feel like this too. There's been this debate, are we going to go into a recession? Other people say we've been in a recession this whole time. I'm kind of the thought that there's a very mixed bag of signals going on right now that's still sort of lingering, persisting through, that's still showing up in the market from what we saw in March of 2020. And then, that the whole world economic shutdown, the logistics, supply chain issues, and then all that money printing has now, it's still seeping into the market for us to figure out what the hell is going on. Because we look at charts today and we compare them to previous times, things that have been like this. When's the last time we've ever been in this situation where you've had the world economy shut down, 80% of all dollars printed, supply chain issues, COVID, a complete administration shift, where all these things coming together now? I don't think we can look at the economy right now with all the signals like you would have 15 years ago and compared it to a time in history. Can you?
Yeah, I mean, no, I think we're in a situation where things have been getting progressively worse since Bretton Woods, since we got off of the gold standard. And I would, you could argue, yeah, we're in a extended period of what happened in 2020, which I could say is an extended period of what happened in the 1970s, right? So we've been slowly degrading, and the buying power of the dollar has been dropping ever since central banks really got their hands on it. So it's, to me, we're just on the same path of printing more money, creating volatility, having a panic bailout, print more money, create volatility, have a panic bailout. And the amounts we're printing is getting more and more, and the gaps between the crisis are getting closer and closer together.
But we have new variables too now, because you can, as a company, produce quite a bit of, for the most part, a lot of different companies are taking advantage of AI, right?
Yep.
The need and the use case of people in the workforce is diminishing, sadly to say it. The economy will keep, this is another thing, is that a lot of our GDP was cooked into federal employment and healthcare. So like the sicker people are, the more money we get to put on our GDP books. Kind of nefarious if you ask me, but if we're looking at the situation now, we have a variable of AI being used in the workforce. We have the automation of a lot of different systems, and especially with the implementation of assets on chain, you pair that with AI aggregating and handling the data. We're talking about the potential doing away of real estate agents in 10 to 15 years from now, if it's a one-click process. So our ability to mine fiat as humans is diminishing. So this is why looking into what systems this entire ecosystem is going to be moving into is so incredibly important. We look at the Berkshire Hathaway chart for however many years it's been up and to the right, right? You're going to put $50 into it, you'd had tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars from inception. What we're looking at right now is the inception of a similar type of movement. I think that AI and blockchain over the course of the next 50 years is going to look very, very similar to that. But then we're going to have nanotechnology. and then organization of that nano with AI systems. There's a lot of money to be made. You just have to be ahead of the curve. Unfortunately, in my demographic, a lot of people are not even paying attention to what's going on. They're just pissed off that their customer service job is gone and it's some chat bot now. And now they're just hanging around receiving unemployment. Like, this is where we need to advance our mindset and our capabilities as humans to stay ahead of this curve and to take advantage, because this is a disruptive technology. We've always hailed crypto as this awesome, disruptive, volatile technology that we can see great price movements on, up and down, especially if you're a trader. But understanding the disruption and understanding you need to pivot into the next version of what our economy and our humanity in a literal sense is going to look like is going to be a very, very important thing. And protecting our privacy along the way is going to be a battle. I think I'm not even prepared. Like, it's going to be a very, very uphill battle to fight against CBDCs. And then yet
again, through all this, we're trying to decipher what to do with our Bitcoin holdings, what altcoins we should buy.
Right.
We're trying to ride that, that brings it to this point that we need to pay attention to. One of those other things we're watching this week, and we've been watching for, about 3 years now, but feels like it's coming to a peak, potentially the Bitcoin dominance hitting 65%. So we have to pay attention to this, because when we come over to the charts and we realize that there's some things, not only is the dominance peaking, the alts charts are also looking like they want a reversal. So there's some things going on here that we should pay attention to. And in fact, later today, I will be filming a video to go out here on Discover Crypto about some of the altcoin purchases I've made very recently and what I'm looking to stack into next. So make sure your notifications are on, because we will be diving into that, because there's not just alts in general. ETH has been bleeding, but we're seeing right now there are some other signs. ETH holders refuse to sell, and there's accumulated the accumulation addresses are really have been stacking in. They've been adding 22.54% increase for those accumulation addresses. So when we look to the Bitcoin chart and we see we have a CME futures gap below us, and we understand also with the dominance that this has just been pushing up and up. Let's go to the daily chart, pushing up and up and up. This is starting to look like it's kind of a bit of a rounding top. Are we getting too bullish here? Do you think we're going to start to see a little bit of a decline here? Do you think this is going to push higher before the alts get their day in the sun, Drew?
Well, your buddy Kevin Svensson said something pretty risque a few weeks ago. What he said was that Ethereum was bleeding against Bitcoin. This is where we're at right now. So we have actually printed 3, you got to zoom in on them, but these are 3 green weekly candles on Ethereum.
Reversal.
Yeah,
Right.
look at that. That's
There
killing
we
me, man.
stay. But
That's
there's
killing me.
honestly, like, you have a lot of volume that happened when on its inception here,
Yeah.
at this range. Then you had a W pattern about 2020, January 2020, and an absolute disgusting rally from there. Where I actually have been looking at this realm to hold it, and then I saw Kevin came out with that a few weeks ago saying this is indeed where he thinks it's going to hold. As of right now, it is still holding. I think it's all this road is still going to lead to Bitcoin in general, but an ETH to Bitcoin pair, it's got a general downward trend line, from top down. I mean, and we've been pretty much respecting this for quite some time here.
Yeah.
I think that if we see a rally about 100% on ETH to Bitcoin, that is where I know if I were to be holding Ethereum, which I am not, that's where I would know, okay, I am gaining Satoshis for my Ethereum holdings. It's Bitcoin show. All of these altcoins and their roads lead to Bitcoin until one of them gets chosen for, a major application. But honestly, we're just at the very forefront of seeing the strategic reserve talked about on a state level and federal level. So it's Bitcoin show. And this goes the same for Solana. I think Solana is in a very similar situation where we have original volume happening basically at this peak and this shelf here. Solana held and it bounced right there. When I see this, come up to the top of this general trend line, about 70%, I'm clipping my Solana project too.
And that's because you're probably smarter than me. I agree with PJ here. He says no sustainable decline on Bitcoin dominance until we get quantitative easing, or at least, and I agree with this, at least the end of quantitative tightening, which I do think will happen in this summer, which I've been talking about a lot. Yep. However, I am holding a ton of ETH, and even though I believe that, I don't know if I'm just slow, I don't want to move things around, whatever it is. I'm holding a ton of ETH, waiting for that to play out. And I do think that will happen. And to your point, Drew, on some of those alt pairings you were just showing, when it happens, it does happen fast. But in the meantime, Bitcoin just keeps churning on, keeps grinding back up. And I guess that leads me to the question: where do you think Bitcoin dominance tops out? Where's it at now? Actually, a couple questions. Let's take a look at Bitcoin dominance, and then let's look at that CME gap, because I was seeing some questions coming in on when was the most recent one. I mean, we had one over this weekend to the upside, but we've got another one to the downside that I think all of us kind of agree we need to go fill first, go touch that around the 92 level, and then.
I mean, we haven't missed a CME since 2023. And that was when the ETFs were put into place, right?
So since the ETFs, we haven't missed one CME gap.
Not a single one.
So there's a pretty high likelihood we're going back down to 92K.
Previous to 2023, I was like, is that 87% probably? I'd done all the like mapping out of it. And, there were some that were slipping through the cracks. Since 2023, we have not missed. The dominant side, scary as hell, honestly. Like, it kind of looks like it wants to go to 70%.
That's 70% makes sense. At least, some people were calling for higher than 70%, but 65, I've said 65 to 70 for a long time. So 65 is usually enough for me to say, all right, we're in the range, but 70 is perfectly within reasonable expectation. But.
70, there's a lot of action that's happened in the past at 70%. So really when I'm looking at it, I'm not going to be surprised if this, because I still feel that we got to see rate cuts really start to come into play and risk asset type behavior come back in for altcoins. Really on the Bitcoin dominant side, like we are currently putting in a red candle, which is great, but it's tiny. And we start, I think we started last week like this too, where it starts off a little red and then just keeps moving on up into the right. So that is where we're at with it. I mean, we had like the fake out. This is something crazy. We are 140 days past norm for Bitcoin dominance holding strong post halving. And when it was supposed to start breaking down like history past, like this fall off and this fall off here, was Christmas Eve, December 23rd. Yeah, there was some gains there for a few weeks, but the reserve conversations, all of the constant bullish adoption on a state and Wall Street level for Bitcoin is just, it's on a buoy. It's on a massive tear right now.
Well, let alone, we haven't seen any real signs or signals in the market, especially on chain, that there's new retail market participants.
Right.
That's one of the things we have not seen this cycle. And so people wonder why there hasn't been an alt season. Well, if you're paying attention, we saw two pretty great sort of mini alt seasons that, yes, fully round trip, but there were massive gains. And then, pretty substantial pullbacks. But then when you come over and look at this chart right here, this is altcoins to Bitcoin. This is literally looking at the total market cap divided by Bitcoin. And you're seeing that the alts themselves do look like they want to, RSI bottoming. We have this rising trend line we have on the altcoins to Bitcoin pair. And if this were to actually break to the upside, we would see that happen. But people see this and think it's just going to actually bounce and just go up from here. In reality, I think that there's going to be a lot of chop along the way before we do get another large move to the upside for all the reasons that you just mentioned, Drew. When you consider all the major amount of liquidity that's coming into this market from corporations, from institutions, from state level Bitcoin reserves that will likely be coming soon, with national Bitcoin reserves, this just absolute race to stack. 95 or more, 98%, maybe even 99% of that big money that's going to be flowing into crypto is going to be very Bitcoin focused. Does that mean that the altcoins aren't going to perform? No, it doesn't mean that. I do think the altcoins will still do well. I think it's not going to be alt seasons like we've seen in the past, so where you throw a dart at the board and everything is running. I think this is going to be a little bit more liquidity focused cycle. And the big runs that we're going to see is once Bitcoin is, I would guess, probably back above $110,000, and we start seeing the broader awareness that does bring in that retail hype that's going to send the altcoins.
Yeah, I mean, and when it does happen, essentially you have to have a plan built ahead of time to know what can tangibly change your life when it comes to selling those altcoins into Bitcoin, or let's say you want a home or something like that, that's actually going to really change your life. Those times come very, very fast. Like an explanation of this is why the pairing charts are so important. when Ava, I did my buys on when the general green dot happened in September 23. And a big portion of those buys were a $10 Avalanche right here when the dominance is actually higher than it currently is on Avalanche. Avalanche's general trend is down and to the right against Bitcoin, but it has these seasons and it's sitting at about $20 right now, but it was 10 here at a higher dominance level. When I saw this run, you know what? I already had the trend line built on this pair as well. And I didn't try to make it all the way to the top of the trend line. I just clipped it when we got close, sold it at $52, got pretty damn close to that local top. And having these pairing charts in the back of our mind as we go through the year, I think is going to be extremely important for when we do see that hype come back in. Every broken clock is right twice a day, right? We have to think about that. So there is going to come a time for these things to start rallying against it. Once again, when that time comes, I have no problem clipping these altcoins back into Bitcoin or real estate because that's the long-term play is stacking the Bitcoin for my children, my family. So.
And speaking of flipping altcoins into Bitcoin, taking profits, securing those profits, whether you're doing it in real estate or if you're doing it in Bitcoin, we prefer to use, I can't reach. Hold on. There it is. Arculus is one of our favorite partners here on this channel. Longtime partner here. If you guys aren't doing self-custody, please look into it. Arculus has one of the best wallets in the game. It's very easy to use. We're going to run a quick word from them and we'll be right back. We just wanted to take a quick second to shout out our sponsor, Arculus. They are a cold storage hardware wallet, helps you secure all of your digital assets for the future. Just tap this thing to the back of your phone and boom, you're in. We wouldn't be able to do this without them, but also wouldn't be able to do this without you guys, the Disco fam. You've supported us a lot over the years. If you want to support the channel now, just use the code DC20. It gets you 20% off this card. It's the #1 way you can support this channel going forward. Thank you for your support. We'll see you at the top. And we're back. There you go. If you guys haven't picked one of those up already, I know a lot of you guys have. Please do use that code. It's really, really great. We'll be hanging out with them at the Bitcoin conference, which shout out if anybody, I know Steve-O's going to be there. Let us know in the chat if you're going to be at the Bitcoin conference in Vegas here at the end of this month. It's going to be a good time.
Kelly's going to cook the steaks. I'm so excited.
We're grilling out, baby. We got a pool house. We got a media house. It's going to be fun. We're hanging out. We're also going to be hanging out. I see you have this on your screen. I did want to mention this. Another new, you guys have seen Chris Klein on the channel before, but Bitcoin IRA, also a channel partner. There's multiple ways to secure your long-term gains. A hardware wallet is one way, but having a tax protected vehicle is another way. It's one of the most important things you guys can do. One of the best businesses in there, have actual good customer service, somebody that will answer the question, answer your tax questions, help you get it set up, help you get it rolled over. So if you haven't already, reach out to Bitcoin IRA. There's a 800 number right there at the top of the screen. Give them a call and you can find out if you can work it with your existing plan, start a new plan. And I think everybody should have some tax protection when it comes to Bitcoin, because once you've made that big money, it's nice not to give it all back to Uncle Sam.
And I just want to shout out BitcoinIRA.com again, because it's not just like we try to very specifically pick very, very specific partners with this channel. And beyond just the partnership we have with Bitcoin IRA, it marks a turning point that we're at within the crypto ecosystem, that you can actually have an IRA where you're a tax protected IRA, a retirement account that you can rotate your existing 401ks into. You can trade on there that gives you tax advantage, meaning you're not paying income tax on all those trades you're making if you're doing it within BitcoinIRA.com. So this is a clear turning point that we're at within the entire crypto ecosystem, and really great signal that where this market's going, that we have these types of tools and mechanisms and ability to navigate like you would in traditional finance. But this is that next world. This is that new world that we're already involved in. So shout out to Chris Klein, shout out to the Bitcoin IRA. Head over there, BitcoinIRA.com. We're excited about this partnership. We're going to be doing a lot of stuff with them.
Yeah. And speaking of, protecting yourself here, I did see this kind of bearish outlook for XRP. We're talking about a price risk of a 45% decline. People would lose their minds if we hit $1.20 per XRP. Kind of funny to me, because we were just at like 60, 70 cents for like years.
It 50 cents for a long time.
Yeah. Kelly, I felt like every time XRP had fallen to, let's say about $2, maybe just under, it had really shown some signs of strength. We're currently at $2.12, and the volume has dropped off over essentially what I'm looking at on the shorter time frames, this volume isn't updating, but the transactional volume is starting to slow down really heavily, and it looks like who's left there is exactly what you're talking about before. It's the retail, basically just changing money hand in hand. But these XRP holders seem to be much more immovable objects than other types of crypto communities. What do you see on the XRP chart that might spark that? Because we do have that initial shelf here at about $1.20, which I think is what the article was highlighting, essentially this realm here. But I feel like, this has been one of the stronger altcoins, and would be very surprised to see it drop below $1.60. But then we talk about Bitcoin dominance maybe moving up. Do you think that is something that XRP holders should watch out for?
When I'm looking at XRP and you just zoom in, this is the 3-day chart. I mean, it's massive bull flag here, but you can also, the problem with technical analysis is it's a little bit subjective. We have a falling channel, okay, but you also have a kind of a bull flag, but you also have this head and shoulders here. It just speaks to the confusion in the market right now without clear direction. I mean, massive wick down here with the bears bringing us all the way down to this trend line beautifully. Bulls ate this back up, but this could not get back over this hump where all this transaction, all this volume essentially traded. $1.20 would be interesting because when I'm looking at the chart, immediately below us, this is what I'd be watching, $1.87, because it's a key level, not only with this candle bounces, all these bounces, but also this previous range high that we see back here. This is, when is this? May 2021. If we lose this, then it feels more likely that the price action is going to come back down here about $1.42. But this is all going to be contingent on what we're seeing as things roll out in terms of liquidity. Because don't forget, it's not just XRP, but when we look at Bitcoin and the broader crypto market as a whole, Bitcoin is going to be a great signal for risk coming into the market. Colin Talks Crypto, for those of you that have seen the CBBI the bull run on-chain metric to really gauge where we're at. This is his account. He's also been sharing these overlays of this adjusting the global M2 as it relates to Bitcoin. It's about a 90 to 110 day differential, but you overlay these and you see this is track this almost perfectly on a directional basis. And so if this were the case, people see this and go, that just means Bitcoin's going up. Well, look at the yellow line. Is it just up? It trends up, but you have these dips along the way. So I, again, will be watching on XRP. If we do get a dip on Bitcoin, if we get a dip on XRP, I do think these are going to be opportunities before higher, much like we see on, this is that CME futures gap. People go, but the gap's above. Well, the more immediate thing I would think would be to come down and fill this before resolving to the upside, because that's just how you always want to see these rise, retrace continuations. That's just the nature of bull structures. In XRP, it still feels bullish. That does not count out the fact that this can't come down and have a little bit of a test lower.
Can you pull the Colin Talks Crypto or post back up? Do you still have it? Yeah, there you go. That was what was interesting to me on that. Yeah, is some of those dates there on the side, because here's kind of what I think could happen heading into this week, next week, into the rest of May, so to speak, but mostly this week. Obviously, we've got a Fed meeting they've already covered. We don't think we're going to see any changes there to the price. CME gap at 92, I think, should fill here, hopefully this week. Hopefully we go down, fill it this week, and then can start moving back up towards 100K and potential all-time highs moving into the Bitcoin conference later in May. I think it's the 25th through the 28th or something like that of May is the Bitcoin conference. And then we've got that date there where he mentions 26th through the June 18th as a potential correction sideways period, because if you're looking at, he's tracking it to the M2 offset.
Right.
And obviously the M2 hasn't just been straight up in a line. There have been points when it did come back down. It did go sideways. So I'd be really interested to see, you've got TA, you've got macro, you've got all these different things. Oftentimes, for whatever reason, you see Bitcoin rally during the Bitcoin conference. I'm not saying there's necessarily causation or correlation. I've seen it happen multiple times. I've been going to that conference every year since they brought it back in 2019. For those of you who don't know, I think they did it in 2013, 14, took a long year break, brought it back in 2019. And oftentimes during the conference, you see the price rally. So it wouldn't surprise me if we push back up towards all-time highs, maybe we're at all-time highs during the Bitcoin conference. We get some big announcement. Everybody's hyped up. We're all high-fiving. Everybody's in a great mood.
Mhm.
Then we get a little bit of a cooling off period, in that June, late May, early June period. Rate cuts come in June, and then the party's back on. Like, that's kind of my forecast I could see over the next 60 days or so. You guys have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have like a general forecast that, I mean, and I agree with you on heavy upward momentum for sure, TJ. I'm just trying to not overtrade. I've done really, really well
Well, that's
trading
smart.
out of the 75 realm. And I did clip the last trade that I had active. I clipped on Friday at like 96 or 97 or something like that. The chat talked me into it.
Yeah. You finally took profits on your 75K, but your bottom long, your generational bottom
Yeah,
long.
that was like a 700%. It was like 733%, but it was what was left over. Because I've been clipping it along the way on each different volume shelf. I'm just trying to not overtrade. I'm exercising patience. It was a great, great buying opportunity at 75. And really, the first thing I'm watching is about 92. And below that, I think it's kind of a quick ride down into like the mid 80s, right? If we
Are you
do
saying you
lose
think
that.
that's going to happen though?
It's a potential. More so what I think is going to happen is we're going to fill that CME at about 92, probably dip below it a little bit to like 91. Find my next entry point and really, start cooking again from there. I just have learned to not overtrade. And this week feels a little bit crazy with the FOMC happening. I've learned to leave Mondays alone just to get a vibe for the markets in general and the weekends. It was tempting this weekend. Glad I left it alone
Yeah.
because,
I mean, you could, especially on L Bank for me, I could see a noticeable difference on the volume being traded
Mhm.
on the weekends compared to the
Absolutely.
week. Yeah.
And it's much easier to manipulate over the weekend,
Yeah.
right? So, I usually like trading when Wall Street's open and, we're getting that general bullish momentum. ETFs are still seeing good inflows. So I'm essentially my windows are very specific from Tuesday to Thursday, essentially, is when I'm looking for good entry points. And then, above and beyond that, taking profits, very, very important. Uh,
Well,
all very, very important.
one of the other things we have to look at too is everything. All these things work in tandem. We have to look at what's happening with the US dollar.
Mhm.
And I shared this about a month ago, but when this is falling, this is the strength of the dollar. When the strength of the dollar is falling, it tends to be a great risk signal for assets, whether it be stocks or Bitcoin. And what this looks like, this beautifully lost this trend line right here, and also this rising support right in here. I mean, look at this beautiful bounce, rejection, and falling through. Now, I pointed this out last week that as we had this large wick to the downside here, if this were to push up, I was basically suggesting that if were to push up, you could also be expecting a little bit of, I don't want to say a struggle, but not just continued just bullishness. We're shooting to 98, then we're going to 100, then we're moving. Like when you're seeing the dollar roll over like this, and you're also seeing Bitcoin having a little bit of a rounding top potential breakdown, this could be another ingredient in that likelihood. Now, as it stands right now, again, this is just looking as frustrating as it can be. Got a nice bullish hammer, bullish hammer candle suggesting a reversal, but then you immediately have a doji, and now the bullish attempt rejected by the bears. This does not yet give clear signal. I think we're going to see choppiness in the market probably through Wednesday, and even on Wednesday, if we were to zoom in on the 1 hour chart or the 15-minute chart, let's pretend this is Wednesday, and I've talked about this a lot this last 6 months. When we get into that mode, I think we're going to see some large impulse, some impulse opposite direction, come back, find stability, and then pick the direction, clearing out people going long, rejecting those people, bull trap, coming down, capturing people going short into a bear trap, coming back to the middle, and then finding a little bit of equilibrium before the directionality happens. And if I had to guess, I would say into the end of next week, into the beginning of the next week. So the end of this week, into the beginning of the next week, I do think this will more likely not resolve to the upside, especially considering everything going on. And, one of the things we didn't even cover today was there's another, I don't know where the story is. There's another story right here. The U.S. Treasury, today's the day, the Treasury Treasury Secretary Bessent is supposed to be giving the report on the strategic Bitcoin reserve. How much is being held? Is it there? And that the deadline's today. Do you think this is actually going to come out? And
I'm muted the whole time. I was talking to Drew. Drew's getting ready for his other show. So, my bad there, guys. But I was saying, yes, there's money and there's opportunities around us all the time. A friend of mine said recently, there's money all around you all the time. You just got to learn how to stop and pick it up. That's absolutely true within crypto. That's absolutely true within all these different altcoins and trading that we're talking about. If you guys want to trade along with us, there is a link in the description. You get a lot of rewards on LBank just for creating and setting up your account. I believe you get $100. But yeah, we're gonna have to wait and see what Scott Percent does. If that report does come out, maybe we'll put it in an upload out later tonight. Maybe we'll cover it in the live stream tomorrow, but we'll be looking for those articles to come out. Smash the like button. Shout out to everybody on Rumble. Shout out to everybody on X. Thanks for joining us here today. 7,000 people watching. We love you, Disco fam. We love being here. Congratulations again to DZ and Kat. I hope they're enjoying the time. He will be back, but obviously he's taking some time with his bride. And hit the like button on the way out. Let us know what you're looking at. Let us know what price levels you're watching for this week. If you're steady bug and you think we're going back below 90K, back into the depths of the crypto bear market, let us know. If you think we're going back up to 100K, I want to know. But yeah, anything else, Kelly, before we break?
No, just a great show. It was a pleasure doing this. Again, shout out to DZ. For anybody that think that there was any clickbait in the title, go back and watch the stream. We talked all about what was going on with the Arizona rejecting the Bitcoin reserve and what's going on with the FOMC meeting this week. We went over some altcoins, levels, charts, all that. We just love being here with you guys. We really appreciate it. We're heading over to Blockchain Basement now,
That's
and then BitLab Academy will be on later. I'm usually on Mondays with Kevin Svensson and Matthew Hyland breaking down the charts, but it's always a pleasure to be with you guys. Again, shout out to Bitcoin IRA, LBank, and Arculus, but I think that's all we got today. We'll see you in the other shows.